Hi, it's Dr. Jenny from Spinal Corrective Center in Amherst, New Hampshire, and I'm joined by Shiri, one of our patients. And we were talking the other day at her appointment, and we had such a great conversation. I said, would you mind going on camera so we could let everyone out there in video land hear what we were saying? Because I think it was really valuable. It was talking about fevers. So, it's common. People will come in and just tell me about how they just got over
You mean we lay all our problems on you?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, so we had something like
through your house.
Yeah, we had something like the flu go through our house, and everybody had their fevers, but my youngest daughter in particular seemed to get really high. 103 to me felt like she was on fire, which 103 isn't even the hottest that my kids have been. So we got to talking about, I think, the highest fever that our kids have had. We both had kids that got up to 105. And I think that we both went into like freak out mom mode.
Even for me, knowing what I know. So we had this conversation about how, maybe it's important as mothers to support each other and remember the whole reason fevers exist.
Please.
Right?
I know. I needed this last week when we were all going through it.
Yeah.
I did not have a very good frame of mind, especially when yours truly had a fever. But it serves a purpose, right?
Because you weren't thinking.
No.
Because, when the whole point of a fever is the body's healing process. So what happens, though, is we think of the fever as now the problem, when actually fever is the solution to the problem. The body's recognizing it's something it doesn't want, say a virus, and it's building up the body temperature to burn it off. So the fever in of itself is good. And I actually got to the place where I taught that to my kids. So even if I was like, there's a fever, they'd be like, Mom, it's okay. I got a healing project.
No, and I think that's going to help them cope with it a little bit too, because every time my kids have had a fever that's really high, we've managed it with sleep and with maybe some Tylenol or something like that. And even when it was 105 and we called the doctor, they said not to come in right there because that was the only symptom that my kids had. My kids otherwise were pretty normal. I mean, yeah, they were tired because they had a fever, but we didn't have any other scary symptoms.
And that's kind of the point, if there's symptoms such as a level of not being aware, so if they're not responsive, or maybe they can't quite move their arms and legs properly, or blueness of the lips, of course you need medical attention. And, even checking in with your doctor to make sure is always a good idea. And, and every family will have kind of their system if they choose to use something over the counter or if they just keep hydrating and maybe put in a lukewarm bath. But I think if we can keep the big idea that the fever is actually like, yes, okay, the body's fighting this, like it's going to be over soon, then we can know that the child's on the right track. And a lot of people end up resorting to medication because of fear of seizures.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if you study this, so for example, Seattle Children's Hospital, they do a really good job on their website. It's updated, and they talk about how a seizure in and of itself is very, very, very harmful. It's actually the body's way of shaking the fever down. And the effects of that really are no concern. There's not a brain damage
So
concern.
the seizure is harmful or it's not harmful?
It's not harmful.
It's not harmful, okay.
Yeah, and if
Wow.
and there's always going to be the outside limits, so of course you have to, make a good choice, but that's usually why we break down and get scared. But even on this website, for example, they talk about how a high fever is not even considered until about 105, and that brain damage doesn't even happen until about 108.
Wow.
So, there's a range, that 103, 104, 105, that really is just keeping the child comfortable, keeping just an eye on them to make sure there's no big warning signs. And oftentimes it'll peak pretty fast and it'll pass.
And not to freak out.
And not to freak out.
Okay.
And support each other.
Yes, please.
That's right. Be well, everybody.